Last week, the U.S. Supreme Court made a major decision. You probably heard about it. It involved the GPS. We talked about that previously on this show, and just real quickly in terms of background, what the case was about is a fellow was thought to be involved in dealing drugs. The police did not get a search warrant, but they put a GPS on his vehicle. They were able to track him 24 hours a day. Now, on one side of the argument, the police said we didn't need to get a search warrant because we were just watching his vehicle. Granted, we used a GPS, but it wouldn't be any different than we were observing his vehicle 24 hours a day. We could have had a policeman out there tracking him, and it would have been the same thing. On the other side, people argued, no, this was much different because this was an electronic device that allowed 24-hour, 7-day-a-week tracking of a vehicle, and it went on for over 4 weeks. And because the vehicle was tracked for over 4 weeks, the police were able to see where the vehicle went and be able to link that to various drug deals that were coming down. And therefore, they said it's very similar to a search, or maybe it's very similar to a wiretap, because you're following this person, you know what's going on all the time. But in any event, it's a violation of the Fourth Amendment. Fourth Amendment, of course, as we're all aware, provides that you are secure in your home, your person, your papers. In short, that the police, the government, cannot engage in any unreasonable searches or seizures. That's why they need to get a search warrant in order to search a home. That's why they need a search warrant for the ability to tap a phone. All right. So now this case goes to the U.S. Supreme Court. And the U.S. Supreme Court agreed that it was a violation of the Fourth Amendment. It was unconstitutional, and the evidence that the police got as a result of that GPS could not come into the case. All right. But what was very interesting is that the U.S. Supreme Court, while everybody agreed, all 9 members agreed that it was a violation of the Fourth Amendment, they did not agree at all as to why it was a violation of the Fourth Amendment. Half of the court, 5 people, basically said it was a search. It was similar to a search going into a house and searching, and he needed a search warrant for that. Others said no, it was more like a wiretap. A wiretap where somebody would listen in on a phone conversation and know what's going on. Okay, so we've got essentially a divided court. They agree in principle that it's a violation, but they can't agree why. Now, why is that important to us? It's very important to you. Fourth Amendment provides that very important protection to you. And yet, we've got emerging technology that was never thought about when the Fourth Amendment was written. I mean, back there in the 1700s, nobody had GPS, nobody had the internet, nobody had cell phones. And today, this technology is here, and it can be used in various ways to watch you and see where you're going, see what's going on. Locations of cell phones can be found through the technology of triangulation. Internet basically can tell what kind of sites you're looking at, what kind of interest that you have. Is this a violation of privacy? Probably is. Can government use this? Well, this is the big question. This is the big question because this new technology doesn't fit into the slots of the old cases. And how the court analyzes this will determine whether the technology can or cannot be used by government. Let's take a little bit of, not such a far-fetched bit of science fiction. Let's assume that instead of a GPS, someday police forces have at their hands a little tiny drone aircraft, like a little helicopter, that can stay aloft for a long period of time, and that it can follow a vehicle for a long period of time, that it televises where that vehicle is, the people coming and going from the vehicle. Is that really a search? Is that like a wiretap? Well, the argument there is nothing happened, no device was attached to the vehicle, and anybody who is out there on the street or in the parking lot where the vehicle is parked could see what was going on, could see who's getting in, who's getting out, who's going up to the vehicle. So what's wrong with that? Does this sound far-fetched? Well, now every little kid has a remote helicopter if they want it. That once upon a time would have been very expensive. Where does this technology go and what's going to happen? Well, we don't know. And the big question is, what happens with the information this technology gets? What happens to that information? And how can that information be used? That's why the reasoning used by the U.S. Supreme Court was so important, and they don't quite know on what basis this was a violation of the Fourth Amendment. So we're in a very murky area here, and this is an area that we're all going to be living in as the world moves forward. And what difference does it make to you? Big difference, because how these over 200-year-old protections continue to protect you will be dependent upon how the new technology available to us, available to private citizens, and importantly available to government will be used. This brings out one final important point, and that is, remember always, the Constitution is about you and government. It's between you and government. It tells government what it can do and what it can't do. It doesn't tell your neighbor what your neighbor can do. Your neighbor might be able to put that GPS device on your vehicle. That's not going to be unconstitutional. It's a violation of privacy, and yes, you can sue your neighbor, but your neighbor can do that, and the only recourse you have is to sue him in a civil court and seek damages for whatever kind of problems arose because he or she did that. We all know Google and various other search engines have lots of information on you and where you go. They have that information. Can they give it to government? That was one of the things that one of the justices raised a question about. Can Google give that information to government without a search warrant? Will somebody be able to say, oh, he went to that website, she went to that other website? They use these websites, we indicate, for some kind of criminal activity, and put all the pieces together and say, hey, that in fact was criminal activity, which we can demonstrate through the websites they went to the things that they ordered off these websites. All right, pretty scary world in some respects, but on the other side of the coin, for 200 years we've dealt with new technology, bringing these old protections, these old principles to this new world in order to safeguard you and your rights. We bring you this program today as we bring you these segments on our video law every week so you understand how the law works, so you understand how to make it work for you. I'm David Allen.